Welcome to another A Continuous Charity Live. This is Imran Nanawal, and we have a very special program and guest for you today. Today's topic is preparing for the upcoming school year with our beloved brother Habeeb Quadri, National Distinguished Principal Award recipient, Superintendent of MCC Academy, educator, author, consultant, and many, many more positive things. Brother Habeeb, how you doing?
I'm doing well, alhamdulillah. Can't complain.
Awesome. How's your Friday?
It's going well.
Have you guys started school this week, or is that next week?
No, we're starting on Monday, inshallah.
Monday.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
May the Most High make it easy, my brother.
Ameen.
So I guess we can go straight to it. Obviously, you've been in the educational game and arena for quite some time. Principal, superintendent, also former teacher. Mm-hmm. You travel around as a consultant, and you give free workshops. You help out whoever you can. So you're in the trenches right now, and you see what everybody's been going through in terms of. I see three stakeholders. I see the teachers, I see the parents, and I see the students.
Yep.
So what are some of the general anxieties that people have been having, or what are some of the general concerns people have brought up to you in terms of this upcoming academic year and some of the challenges that we could potentially face?
I mean, for right now, there's a few, right? So you come from the teacher side, you have this kind of unique thing and say, okay, you know what? Emergency happened. We had to go online, remote learning. But now it might be a whole year, right? And now when you think of something of a whole year where you build that relationship with kids, because, education, and I think parents have understand this now, that it's not just the idea of just learning, right? But the idea is that the character, the development, the social, the emotional, the gross motor skills, we're hanging out, learning, playing outside, the ups and downs of the class, of the day, of the hall. So all these other factors, I think, are something that's that plays a big part that you can't always get just on online remote learning. So I think that's one challenge that you see from the teacher side. When you see from the parent side, they're just like, oh my God, my kids have been home since March. It's 4 or 5 months, 6 months. What are we going to do? These kids have been around us, and they haven't been able to now. And what people don't realize that it's that they are not been able to hang out with their friends, play in athletic sports, or after school clubs, or any group activities that they used to. They're not been able to go to their families' houses, their relatives' houses, grandparents' houses. Maybe now it's been, a little bit more, people are kind of getting a little bit more relaxed. But you'll see that it's changed a lot. So now the whole mindset of a kid of their daily perspective has changed. Right. So that idea of now, like, okay, are we going to go, if the people who are going in person, like, the fear, anxiety of maybe, do I get COVID? Do I not? So you'll see those specific factors. And then the third is just the parents, right? They're just kind of balancing out. They want their kids to have the education experience, but at the same time, they know what could be there. So it's kind of how to balance that. They're trying to figure out themselves, their own job situations, right? So there's a lot going on, right? So there's just a lot of anxiety at the various levels. And each person's going to deal with different things in a different way.
So what are some of the things that you guys as educators have been doing to kind of ease the minds of the teachers and the parents? Talk to us about some of the things that have been implemented, because the way I look at it is it's not an ideal situation, obviously, but we know that especially with younger kids, they're adaptable, right? So they're going to adapt to whatever the circumstances are. And also for the kids and the teachers, these are the skills of our era that we need to learn, right? We need to have digital literacy. So I know that maybe the onset of it is a little bit difficult, but I feel this time period is going to prepare us for what the next 5 or 10 years is going to look like.
Yeah, and this is, you're hitting on the point, because now it is going to be that digital literacy, because things have changed, right? Now we thought maybe, okay, you know what, let's be honest. Everyone thought like, okay, this may be like, okay, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we'll go back to life. And it's like boom, boom, athletics, sports, traveling, vacations. I mean, every aspect of life has just been boom, 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 hit. And I think that kind of changed the whole game. And now it's saying, wait a minute, and now people with Zoom meetings and realize, wait a minute, we could do this, we could meet here. And now even sometimes people are like, well, why just meet on Zoom? It's almost, so it's going to change. So the whole digital literacy for teachers, what they need to do, how they need to teach, how they're going to, what are the apps out there. And even these software companies are trying to build new things, right? They're trying to outdo each other. So as even our teachers, like, some of these our teachers, I got to admit that they're just awesome. So I'm like, hey, look, I just found this app. And they're trying to see what interfaces with others. what's out there, right? And so bringing people who know their stuff, I know you're in that field too, where hey, they're looking at, hey, who are individuals who could kind of provide stuff, and it's kind of like at a rapid speed because you're kind of moving with the flow. It's not just like a one-time thing. It's maybe for 180 days, right? And then even the people who are even in the building, they still got to do some taping for the remote. Then they got to figure out how to do that. So there's a lot going on. I was speaking to a school, someone had called just today, and they're like, hey, wait a minute. How are we going to go ahead and deal with this situation that we are not going to be able to if we're taping, but we have a Wi-Fi issue, and if they don't get to see it live, what do we have to do? We have to tape it again. It's almost like double the work. So there's going to be these challenges in saying, okay, what's there? So even if I'm in person, I still got to tape to make sure the people at home can see. And especially for private school institutions, they're like, wait a minute, we got to do anything possible to make sure people don't go back to the public school sector, and making sure provide that same quality education, same all the other experiences that maybe that other schools or private schools try to do, especially religious schools with that, the whole tarbiyah aspect of it. So it's like changing the whole mindset in games. So even the teachers have to kind of reset, parents have to reset, students have to reset, and then kind of like administration say, well, how do we facilitate and anchor everyone to kind of work together to make this happen?
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because last week, I believe Zoom and Canvas both had technical issues. Yes. And I know that created a lot of anxiety amongst the instructors. But I think, again, these are going to be learning curves for not only the educators and the students and the parents, but also the organizations who are offering solutions. Because maybe a year ago, your capacity was at this level, and that's the amount of people that were using your technologies. But now it's gone. Everybody's using these technologies, and I'm sure the stock of these companies has gone up. But right. What I was also going to mention is that I feel that from March or March to June, when the initial onset of training was happening, I did some trainings. I know you've done some trainings at the university level, from what I've noticed, and at the elementary level. The anxiety was much higher than it is now. And if you see the questions that instructors were having then, which was, what is Zoom? What is Google? What is Google Meet? And now you see that they know the advanced features. They're trying to get advanced Google Classroom integrations and whatnot. So I think that there is definitely light at the end of the tunnel, and the teachers have done a fabulous job of not only innovating in the classroom, but learning these technologies.
Yeah, and it's funny because, in March, everyone's kind of figuring things out, right? Now that, hey, we're ready to go. And when we're ready to go, you want to go ahead and say, let's just make this happen. And I think what happened this summer, people are like, okay, might be longer. Let's start finding out stuff. So now what people don't realize, it's, when people are like, oh my God, how can this crash? And say, this is not just United States or Illinois participating in it. It's the whole world participating in Zoom, right? Or in Google Classrooms and all this, right? So it's like everyone there. And now you got two situations. You got one, everyone's trying to get there and know how to work. Everyone's trying to learn. Everyone's trying to update. Softwares are trying to compete with each other. Then you also got these hackers trying to cause more trouble. Then you got these young kids who know a lot of technology. Let's have some fun. So you got all these factors coming together to say, like, hey, we're at the same time learning what's to happen. Some people want to make this, how do you make this fun for kids to learn? But then these other kids are like, well, let's have some fun in the way to make the lives of these instructors a little tough, right? So those are challenges, right? And you'll see that these high schools in the news and say, oh, this kid, photobombed or did this, and so all these things. So it's going to be, as technology, they're thinking of a device to keep safety protection, but then these other hackers are thinking of new ideas, right? So there's a lot of ongoing challenges, but the idea of technology, information, and learning process in these last few months has been huge. Even adults are like, well, you know what? I can't go and see my kid. I'm going to learn how to Zoom. I'm going to learn how to, my father, I don't think he's ever Zoomed his whole life, but now, so it's become another whole ball game. And even for me as an individual, maybe I won't say I'm really strong in technology. I've realized I have to kind of use it more and more just to kind of keep things going.
I guess another benefit is that because of the technological implementations, parents are probably or possibly having to be more involved in the kids' education, right? So I feel like they're even having to be more involved, learn who the teachers are, help set up the various classes for their child. So there's some more involvement even for the parents.
Yes. I mean, especially for early childhood parents, right? When you got the preschool, pre-K, kindergarten parents, they're going to have, they're like, look, okay, I have to maybe be there, right, until they get settled. Right now, this is where this idea of, you make your kids like anything, like so, I'm going to do everything for them. See, when you don't make these kids independent, this is when it kind of bites them, right? When you want to be like, don't have to pick up stuff. And I'm always like, look, let these kids kind of focus and learn. They're going to have some tough time. But even preschool pre-K, it's so important for having these kids have this opportunity to go ahead, write, implement, put these things together and go forward, right? So early for parents, it's been tough, right? But this is where hopefully that we could build some of this independent skills in some of these kids as they're going through, and there's going to be some tough time. But also, it's a great time for parents to build a relationship with the kids and learning, right? Now you're kind of really part of the learning process, right? Some of us might not want to have that kind of like, well, that's why I send my kids to school, but it's reality right now.
So I'm
enjoying the time with my kids, in some ways, but so I got to appreciate these moments.
Yeah. I mean, this is, God knows best, but this is probably temporary, even if it's for the whole year. So this is going to be a unique time. In 10 or 20 years, we're going to look back at this time period and remember that crazy, 2020 year that we had and all the things that happened during that time, but also this educational experience where, I have several little ones and you have to have several devices and several laptops and iPads. So that's another question. What about some schools have been complaining about issues with accessibility to devices? I mean, what have you read or seen about that?
So one of the things that, no doubt about in spring, they realize that, hey, look, a lot of people don't have devices because even if they have devices, you might live in a condominium, an apartment, where you might have the association one Wi-Fi access. So you can't go ahead and just manage and just be like, okay, I'm going to use that, right? Because sometimes there's only limits of how much it could be used. So there are various things that people have their housing situations. You have 3, 4, and then even 4 or 5 kids are on the same time at the Wi-Fi at their house. They're not used to, they don't have that Wi-Fi setting that strong as you might have like in a company, right? They're like, wait a moment, we don't have no extra side, connectors to make this power stronger, right? So that becomes the whole thing. Even for teachers, we're like, hey, double check your speed limits and so on and so forth. Our IT team is informing our staff. So I think that is something that you will see now so what schools are trying to do is, as we were, hey, if people do need something like an iPad, hey, what's another resource to go ahead and do that? It's needed because when you have 4 or 5 kids, you can't buy 4 laptops. It's crazy. So, and now what's happening is many parents are working from home too. And business has been really nice about that. But if they need that laptop, how the other kids are going to be using the laptop, right? Or the computer or whatever. So I think that becomes a challenge if the classes are all at the same time, to have that, so it's pre-recorded. So there are a lot of those challenges, right? So if you have a family of 4 and then the husband, wife, they're both working, they're online and everyone. So it's going to be also an economic challenge too, with the technology and then scheduling. So there's a whole family schedule now, right? The building collaboration, in the sense of learning and sharing.
So then talk to us about then this, how do we reconcile these two different sides? We have now the parents who have an extra burden of maybe shelling out some money and having to get devices. I know in some schools or districts that there's district money for these type of things. Yes. But on the other hand, the teachers have this, it seems like a monumental task of, I had the students on site for say 8 hours, but now we have to take this 8-hour on-site education and replicate it digitally, knowing that I can't have these students sit for 7 or 8 hours straight, just virtually. Right. So what advice would you give to both sides?
I think one is that for the parents, I think, speaking to your school district and seeing if they have that and have resources, you need to ask, like, if you need it, because not everything, not everyone's going to have the money to dish out to buy those. I think that's one thing that's there, and say, at least if you get 1 or 2, maybe every school could say, we could give 1 to the family, or, help out with the family if they need it. And I think, and that's something that a lot of schools even try and provide, even private schools or whatever they can. States were trying to get some money for that, but, again, there's limitations here and there of which districts got more than others. Then the other aspect of it might be just from the school setting is just, hey, what can you provide, and making sure first are teachers so they can make sure they educate and teach and they have the right resources and the platform so able to go ahead and do that. So I think it's a balancing act. It's a balancing act trying to get everyone to work together. It's a balancing to understand with the fiscal responsibility and numbers that people have at the house and even at the school, especially private schools, right? Say, well, this is what we have. How do we work with that? So I think, this is where we are learning to first be thankful, being grateful, but at the same time being resourceful, right? And I think that's something I'm going to have, remind myself and everyone else that you're going to have to really be resourceful now, and then be grateful for what we have and how it used to be, and saying, okay, you know what? Okay, now how are we going to be resourceful and try to maximize from what we have, right? So even with some limitations.
I think you wrote an article recently covering some C's. Could you
Yes.
could you bring that up and illuminate us a little bit in terms of
Sure,
what
sure,
you?
sure. One of the things that was kind of, I wanted to kind of talk about just kind of yesterday, sent out a article, and I was talking about, how important some, the idea like C, the first is communication, right? That right now as parents, it seems so important to communicate with your kids and seeing how they are, how they're feeling, where are they now, with all that's going on, just not even with COVID, it's the social injustices that's going on with, with some of the crime that's going on, especially in the area that I live in, right? The Chicagoland area, right? There's just a lot going on, the rioting, the lootings. There's so many things, and kids are trying to put this together. So having communication with kids, how they're doing is one. Then also communication with their expectations of school is, right? And then as a parent, also communicate with their teachers and saying, okay, what is, how's the COVID learning going to be? What is their expectations? How can we contact? Where's all the resources that they're going to have? So having that communication, I think, is very important. The second thing is having consistency in the house. That means waking your kid up at a certain time. And when they wake up, brush their teeth, even combing their hair, and also making sure that they even change their shirt. Because why it's so important that if they have that routine, it's going to change that. So that practice of just having that consistency and routine. Even the idea of eating, that consistency of even hanging out with their friends, maybe on the, if that means Zoom, if that means outside at the playground, social distancing, if that means just kind of making, the third is like, having consistency even in their playing, entertainment to have, but get like an hour or two, not like 6 hours of, Fortnite or NFL 2K, like I just have, like you have to tell my son, like, hey, I know you want to play, but hey, there's going to have to be a limit. Then just at the limit of going outside. I think there's a consistency of playing outside is also huge to get some sun, to go out there. And I'm talking about not just for kids, but for parents, all of us. So the idea of having a time for entertainment, having a time to exercise and get, and play. So the other C is cardio, making sure that cardio aspect of it also happens. But then also the idea of where you're going to have that to remind our kids that with making sure you communicate, making sure you're consistent with all these things we just talked about, making sure you have good, cardio and taking care of yourself. The other thing is that, hey, this is a great time for building character. This is the time that in life that what you call, these are things that you can learn how children would have grit, right? To build resilience, that this is the time. Because sometimes kids like, is this the only time? And sometimes you have to go back in life and look, everyone went through at certain times. Right? It could be the World War II situation. It could be a Vietnam situation. It could be, there's a Spanish plague back in 1900. Everyone had some challenges. Refugees still have it in different countries. There's still countries in the world that there's famine or lack of nutrition, water, and so on and so forth. So a lot of other conversations that happen to understand kids and say, well, this is how you have. Can't be like, oh my God, why this, right? Kids were devastated when they couldn't go to graduation. Like, what? I can't believe this, this happens, and say, well, you know what? At least you had an opportunity, maybe graduate at home, maybe it was delayed, but you have this opportunity to even celebrate. Some people can, right? And then the last thing is just the idea of courage, right? Like have confidence, right? This school year, to have confidence in yourself and say, like, you got to move forward, right? And because, there's a great quote that says, courage is not the absence of fear, right? Courage is not but courage is to move despite the fear. Right? It's not the absence. Like you can't, like when someone has courageous, they still have fears, but they just kind of put it together and be like, let's go to make this happen.
They don't freeze.
And I think that's where, it's funny. Just I had a situation about 3 days ago. I took my kids with a few other kids to play at the park, and someone brought a dog. Now, some of you guys might know Indo-Pac people. Some of us were, not used to having dogs. So I was like, okay, this girl had this little dog, little good, nice girl. She had a dog, which was a little bigger than, I think she could handle. Father was away, and it went away. And now it's, all these 4 or 5 Muslim kids running and it's chasing them. And I don't like dogs myself, but I was like, I had fear myself. I was like, courage. Sit down. Right? To get the dog to calm down. I'm like, everyone, please, don't worry, you got this right. I'm like buying time, and I'm like, okay, I'm kind of panicking myself, like, all right, as long as it's not biting me, calm down, right? The guy gets a hold of the leash, right? So, but the idea, I mean, that's kind of more of an entertainment kind of joke, but kind of factor. But the idea that all of us have that, right? So anytime in the school setting, that like the worry, teachers are going to have this idea, but that's the worry of, what should we do now? So I think just having that confidence of saying, all right, you know what? Let's kind of make this happen. Let's do this. I know it's going to be tough, but I'm going to do this. I'm going to do my best, and then hopefully God will take care of the rest.
I like that, because there's a lot of knocks on this generation And obviously we're talking earlier about similarities in our childhood and growing up in the 80s and 90s and all the stereotypes against Indians and Pakistanis. But I would say that while there's a lot of knocks against this batch of youth, I feel like they've gone through a lot in terms of from the time they were born and exposed to all the media and technology, seeing the constant societal issues, the constant war, the constant things going all around the world. And right, they're just constantly bombarded with all this information and stress. But now I feel like this is really, like, as you eloquently put it, this is the opportunity to develop that resilience and grit. And I hope that this is the generation that can really take society forward, when they become professionals and scientists and doctors and teachers and engineers and just good Samaritans. So I really like that.
Yeah, and I think it is at that time that a lot of times people don't realize that if you look at all these kids who are growing, like a 9/11 era, right? All they've seen is that Muslims are, especially for Muslim kids, right? It's like always on attack.
On the news. Yeah.
This, hey, Muslims on news, Islamophobia, immigration rights, war, torn. So it's a challenge constant going on. Then you got internal, now with the social injustices that are happening in minorities. And then you got some people at high levels calling people out of different races, ethnicities, and faiths. It's not easy. And I think that's something that I've realized that more and more our kids have, had some challenges. Even though, yes, there might have been sometimes maybe things easier for them too, right? The technology and this opportunity. But at the same time, that social emotional aspect has taken a hit, right? And I think if we don't provide our kids that right resources of how to deal with this and not just hush it under the rug or just helicopter everything and protect them, it has to be that balance, right? Because it's going to happen. And sometimes when it does happen, like you see some of these, I feel bad sometimes the millennials get a lot of, pushback, right? But the idea of our they pick on them a little bit about this idea of like, okay, they can't deal with like feedback, right? Like, oh my God, they're very sensitive and so on and so forth. But I think this is that time. And so, at the end, they have gone through a lot too, right? I think every stage and every part of life have gone through at certain times, right? And I think every group, when you grow up, like, man, we had it the worst. And I think as you get older, you start saying, okay, that wasn't that too bad, right? You sometimes even laugh about it, right? Like, okay, as we go through these challenges.
Yeah. So I guess the next question for you is, I kind of I lost my train of thought. But what are some of the last advices that you have now that, going towards the conclusion of this talk? Give us some hope or give us some tips from a professional. I remember what I was going to ask you. So specifically for MCC Academy, you guys do a lot of really interesting things with the kids. I've seen you guys, I've seen yourself. You dress up in this giant panda suit. You're like 6'4". You come and dress like a panda, and you have all these different costumes. And you do this assembly. You raffle out awards. You give presents and gifts. You call up students who are rewarded for their behavior and being helpful. And you've taken your kids to different MBA events and different types of really amazing events. How are you guys thinking about replicating some of those opportunities?
Yeah, and that's what going to be our challenges, where we were kind of thinking to ourselves and say, hey, look, how can we? I was remember with the Islamic Studies department, we've been kind of thinking at even at the elementary level, what can our things we could do? So we're like, okay, maybe Friday khutbahs, we'll have our Friday talks by our kids. So even if it's not a khutbah, but like a Friday talk. So you know how every year we do Friday khutbahs for our kids. Right. So one of the conversations that I was having with our elementary, saying, okay, you know what? And then, writing out stuff and say, okay, now that we got our school started in the next week or two, what are other things that we could do right now to kind of change the game after the regular settings? So one of the things was like, hey, maybe every Friday we set a kid to do a Friday talk, like a 5-10 minute reminder. And now forget the audience is not just the kids, it's the whole school and their parents, right? For telling a kid and say, guess what? You could maybe have 500 to 800 people watch you. They could be nervous, but at the same time, gives us this opportunity to go ahead and learn. Some of these kids are already on YouTube and TikToks doing their, whatever moves that they do. So this opportunity and kind of showcase. And so I was kind of thinking, so we could do that, like a hadith a week, and really getting the kids out to do the same thing. And I realized when kids come out and we showcase their talent, it changes the game, right? It's funny. A lot of people don't realize this, but I was a very quiet kid. Like if you see my son, we're kind of similar, very talks when you have that, but not, not really, people would even say I was shy. But when in front of my mom or my house, I'm like, doing all these specific things. And I think through sports and other things, they kind of say, hey, I can manifest and do this. And I realized sometimes I felt like faith was like, oh, you can't do this stuff. And until like I went to like youth camps, like midnight, where I could showcase your creativity, then you start seeing like talents like they're out there, and you see so many kids are just amazing. So like our tech squad, like they've done a great job of like even like having kids like do news reporters, right, like of the school. Wow. They do great, like, and you see those things, and so that's why now it's kind of like, okay, now we are on Zoom. Let's change the game. So even parent seminars we could do on Zoom. We can have kids kind of present on Zoom. We were trying to even do like I know it's still kind of we're trying to see how we can make it better. We did 1 or 2 last spring, but I think we got to update it to like have our Friday assembly through Zoom experience. So I think those are challenges, and I think as educators we have to start thinking different ways. You can't be like, well, you know what? Because it's crazy, well, you know what, we're only not going to do this, and say, well, this is how we're going to try to do this and try to still entertain individuals and then make them feel a part that, especially that, and that's the part that we're Islam studies teacher thing, like how do you get that tarbiyah aspect that we sometimes had at the school, and then implicating the prayers and the morning assemblies or the Friday prayers, the Friday assemblies and all that. So that's going to be one of our challenges, right? But then that's the whole part of life, right? There's always going to be some specific challenge in how to come together. So give us about a few weeks, man. I'm gonna kind of show, try to kind of do some things with our team here who are just amazing about kind of doing stuff. And I already saw some of these teachers do these emojis in their classes and stuff, like they rock. Like we have some teachers really kind of going out above and beyond, and I'm kind of learning from them because technology is something that I'm new to the game, but we're slowly try to keep on implementing it.
I would definitely try to publish something in a couple of weeks, because you guys, from my experience, are doing really innovative and cool things with the kids. So I think for the larger private school network to kind of be informed based on what you're doing is very important. Alhamdulillah. So
MCC Academy, just check out those the teachers, they do amazing jobs. So teacher web pages, they got their stuff there. I'm facilitating, they're doing all the work, right? They do all the work, I just do all the talking.
So take us home, man. Last few minutes now. Give us the last piece of advice. Think about the parents, think about the kids, think about your teachers, other teachers. Think about, I've been reading reports about more counselors having to be available because people are stressed out, people are worried, people are slightly depressed. So what's your final advice?
No, I really do believe, and I know I had kind of, when you had asked me about the 5 C's, I think I really believe that communication is going to be huge. Communication, checking in with your kids, like where are they, how are they, socially, emotionally, mentally, academically, kind of seeing what's going on. You have to kind of have these conversations. Like even I realized my son, like after 2-3 days, he was like kind of sitting around, not coming on. I'm like, look, we got to go outside. We're going to play. Because it was like a video game. I'm like, I know, because he was never big a video game, but now he became a bigger gamer, right? Because we're at home. I'm like, okay, we're going to come out. So I think having that opportunity, getting out, getting some sun, moving around, and even what parents don't realize, to help your kids, you got to take care of yourself. I'm a big believer that you got to take care of yourself. You have to have your me time, right? You got to do that. I shouldn't be quoting a rapper here, so I'm going to let that go. I'll just say Lil Wayne, I'm doing me kind of thing. But the idea of kind of taking care of yourself, it is something very important. That what happens is that I think when people start doing that, they understand that, hey, look, this is something that it's very important. So what is the mental aspect of the emotional aspect, but also religiously, right? Faith helps us take care of things and understand things that sometimes don't make sense. And I think that played a big part, in life, and from other challenges that all of us have, or even personally I've had, where I think faith helps you kind of make sense of things that sometimes don't make sense, right? So I think that's the idea of communicating in all those aspects, right? And I think the idea of understanding that it's okay for kids to have fear, right? So that courage aspect of really saying, guess what? You might be, it's okay. You might have anxiety. We'll get that support for you. You can't be like, how dare you have tawakkul Allah, have faith in Allah, trust in Allah, and everything should be fine. No, people are going to feel that way, right? Everyone's going to have different personalities, and all of our kids are different. Kids different. Me and you might perceive things differently, right? All of us have that. Even our husband's wife think two things deal with the same issue in 2 different ways, right? So I think just kind of having that, I think also it's very important, and that consistency part, like having consistent, because this might go for another year, right? SubhanAllah. So I think if you don't make that routine, like people are like, okay, you know what, don't wake up, but if you don't change, get up, take care of yourself, it's going to make an impact, right? Just like, in academics, they say like the summer slide because you're not doing stuff, and now you got the COVID slide. But the COVID slide is not that academically, it's also that emotional aspect. The summer gets that, maybe the academics will go down in summer, but then that fun, the social aspects, like lit, it's not this year. So now when your kids don't got the fun aspect didn't happen, their athletic stuff didn't happen, their friend stuff didn't happen, their family stuff didn't happen, their family vacation didn't happen, and now school didn't happen, and school's not the way they want it to be, it's there. So that's why checking in, getting in there. But I think in overall, if you work as a family together, we can move forward. And that's why kids need to realize that, look, we all know we're going through challenges, but I'm going through it. So that positivity from an adult plays a big part in success of kids. What they see and hear at the house is going to play a part of how they're going to deal with stuff. So inshallah ta'ala, kind of keep those things in mind. And then, I'm a big believer, man. We just do our best. And then God will take care of the rest. Because after a while, as long as we did our thing, then we know it's a qadar of, it's a destiny of Allah. But as long as we could, in the back of our mind, say, hey, I tried, and now it didn't work out, that's there. But when someone doesn't do their part, you don't give 100%, and you're like, oh, that's what it is. No, God knows. Right? God knows everything. Everyone else you could fake and say, yeah, did you really give 100%? But God knows if you gave 100%. So, so we got to just check ourselves on that.
I appreciate it, man. I'm really hoping for the best for you, your school, all the other schools, and all the other students and parents who are going through this. Thank you, and thank you to the MCC Academy staff for producing such great results.
Yeah, no, we're chipping away. We still saw that, but I really want to thank the teachers out there who do all the work, and administration and all the staff and everybody. But thank you, man, brother. I love you, brother, for all the work that you're doing too, and especially ACC, for all supporting many people to go to college without taking any interest. That's amazing. To get people to be successful people in this world, so they can help people, because that's part of our duty, is to help. Help creation. God will help you, right? And so that's something that I really want to do. So you help God's creation, God's going to help you. So I think I really appreciate the work that you guys are doing and kind of helping, providing these opportunities for kids to go learn, and at the same time not have that stress of being in deficit for so many years, and they're able to come back, and then later on, when they take care of it, they're helping someone else out, right? So just kind of, it's just like we're just helping a fish, man. That's what's
awesome. Continuous charity. It's a continuous charity.
It's rolling. I appreciate
another wrap example.
Oh, sorry, I don't know. Stuff, man. I apologize. We'll see about that a while. I get kind of, the inner city comes back in me.
For everybody who wants to. Habeeb publishes articles from time to time, which are very beneficial, especially for parents and children and educators. So you can follow him on social media, specifically Facebook. It's Habeeb Quadri, and you'll get access to the articles. The school is MCC Academy, where you can see what the school is doing. He gave an excellent plug to A Continuous Charity, and as you mentioned so eloquently, it's an organization that lets you study at cost, right? So if your tuition is $20,000, if you take a traditional loan, you might wind up paying back 25, 27, 30, 40, depends on how much you take, how long you take to pay it back. If you get approved through A Continuous Charity, you take 20, you give back 20, and that 20 is then recycled to new batches of students. Thus, everyone's getting that continual reward for supplementing and helping others pursue education. So check us out at acceducate.org. We also offer workshops and seminars through very qualified individuals like Habeeb and like many others who are very qualified in their respective fields. So one more time, Brother Habeeb, thank you so much. Thank you to all the educators, and we'll talk soon, brother.
Assalamu alaikum, man. Appreciate it, brother.
All right, brother. Take care.